Now that around 85% of people have either received their stimulus payment or it's on the way, the next logical question many people have is, why is it smaller than what I expected? Why was it not the $1,200? Why am I missing my $500 dependent payment? Well, luckily, there's some guidance on this, and I'm going to go over the top 8 reasons why this may have happened. So let's get right to it, starting with reason number 1. It may have happened because you have not filed a 2019 tax return or the IRS has not finished processing your 2019 return. If possible, the IRS uses information from the 2019 return to calculate the economic impact payment. However, the IRS will use your 2018 return if you have not yet filed for 2019. It's important to point out that if you've already filed for 2019, the agency will still use your 2018 return if it has not finished processing your 2019 return. So it could be sent in and acknowledged, but not yet processed. Thus, they will go off your 2018 return. And as an important side note, the IRS has said that them accepting a tax return electronically is different than completing processing. Just because they've accepted it does not mean it has been processed. And as a side note, on the side note, any issues with the 2019 return mean the IRS would use the 2018 filing as a default. If the IRS used the 2018 return, various life changes in 2019 would not show in the payment you received. These could include anything from a higher or lower income, the birth of a child, or the adoption of a child. If you fall into one of these categories, you should be able to claim the additional amount on your 2020 tax return next year. This could include up to the $500 additional stimulus payment per child if you have not received payment for them. Like, for example, if you had a child this year in the 2020 year, of course that would not be on any tax return, so you could later claim that on your 2020 taxes. For those whose income has changed, there's some kind of mixed information on the clawback for amounts that you received that were not owed to you. An example here is if you earn $60,000 in 2018 and $150,000 in 2019, and your taxes for 2019 have either not yet been filed or haven't been fully processed, you would receive that full $1,200 stimulus payment, but per the IRS, you may be required to actually return it. However, there's been some stated criticism here, basically saying the lack of clawback language in the CARES Act means that the funds could potentially be kept. So there's some gray area here. I'm giving you both sides because there's not like exact guidance on what exactly to do in that scenario. The second reason why your stimulus payment may be different than what you expected is claimed dependents are not eligible for the additional $500 payment. So that means only children eligible for the child tax credit qualify for the additional payment of up to $500. To claim the child tax credit, in most cases, you must be related to the child and live with them more than half of the year and provide at least half of their support. There are a few exceptions, though, besides children who are your own children. Also included in this are adopted children, foster children, younger siblings in some cases, grandchildren in some cases, nieces and nephews in some cases. These all may count as eligible dependents and may count towards that $500 payment, all depending on your specific situation. Additionally, any qualifying child must be a U.S. citizen, permanent resident, or other qualifying resident alien, and must be under the age of 17 at the end of the 2020 year. This means if you had a child dependent who turned 17 in the 2020 year, you'll be eligible for the $500 stimulus per dependent payment. This is a question that I received many times, and there was a specific question where someone had a daughter who had turned 17 in April of 2020, And yes, she was eligible for that $500 dependent payment because it's based off of the 2019 taxes. So a qualifying child must also have a Social Security number or an adoption taxpayer identification number. A child with an individual taxpayer identification number, an ITIN, is unfortunately not eligible for that additional $500 payment. Parents who are not married to each other and do not file a joint return cannot both claim their qualifying child as a dependent also, just as a little side note there. Moving on to reason number 3. Dependents are college students. Now this is one that's been a pretty big issue with the adult dependents. Dependent college students do not qualify for a stimulus check even though their parents may claim them as dependents. So here's an example. A 20-year-old full-time college student is claimed as a dependent on their mother's 2019 taxes. That college student is unfortunately not eligible for a $1,200 economic impact payment, and the student's mother will not receive that additional $500 for her dependent. So it's very unfortunate in this situation and a little bit ridiculous, to be completely frank, but the somewhat good news here is of the many future direct stimulus proposals, most of them include payments for adult dependents. So hopefully this doesn't happen in the future if we receive additional stimulus payments. This could also happen if the IRS does not have up-to-date information. Here's another example. Let's say you are a dependent on your parents' 2018 tax return, but not on their 2019 tax return. And your parents' stimulus payment is based off of their 2018 return, either because their 2019 hasn't been processed or they haven't submitted it yet. You, the college student in this example, would likely not receive a stimulus payment now. However, you should be able to claim the $1,200 as a credit on your 2020 taxes. So there's some good news there if you have not received it, and you should have if it was based off of the 2018 taxes. Moving on to the 4th reason. Claim dependents are parents or relatives older than 17 years old. So many people take care of or live with elderly parents or relatives, and they claim them as dependents, rightfully so. They're taking care of them. Unfortunately, this is the same situation as the college student situation. Adult dependents are simply not eligible for the $1,200 payment, nor is the taxpayer eligible for the $500 per dependent payment because they're over the age of 17. It's just a very unfortunate situation, especially for the people who are taking care of people. They need the money more than anyone else. If you're taking care of someone who can't take care of themselves, seems a little bit ridiculous to me. They say that it was done this way because of just the speed of the system in order to get payments out as quickly as possible, but it's just a little bit frustrating, to be completely honest. Reason number 6 could be because past due child support was deducted from your payment. The stimulus check can be altered by past due child support. The Bureau of Fiscal Services, though, if this happens, will send you a notice. So you will know if it was deducted from child support. If you're a married, filed jointly, and filed an injured spouse with your tax return, half of the total payment will be sent to each spouse. However, the payment of the spouse who owes past due child support will be offset by the child support amount. Moving on to number 7. If you earn more in 2018 than you did in 2019, your stimulus payment might be different than what you expected. So here's another scenario. Let's say you made $80,000 in 2018 and $60,000 in 2019, and your 2019 return has not yet been processed or you haven't submitted it yet. In this scenario, your stimulus check will be lower than expected because the IRS is not aware of your income changes because you're over that threshold in order to receive the full payment. Moving on to the eighth and final reason. Creditors garnish the payment. This one is the most frustrating of them all. The economic impact payment is not protected from garnishment by creditors once the proceeds are deposited into a bank account. So this is extremely unfortunate, as there's been verbiage in future bills preventing this from happening if additional stimulus payments are issued, which I really hope that verbiage stays in there. Because, I mean, the whole point of a stimulus is just to stimulate the economy so people can go out and buy things that they need or even that they want to stimulate the economy, not to pay things like overdraft fees. So the issue still stands that banks and creditors are not barred from taking all or part of a stimulus payment to pay off certain debts, like overdraft fees or just other things that are owed. The secondary good news here is many banks have decided to postpone these types of fees just because of the events that we're in right now. However, this is undoubtedly not a decision made by every single bank and creditor. There are people who are taking out portions of these payments. Like I said, this is the most frustrating reason of them all. So finally, this brings us to the question of, what if the amount of my stimulus check is incorrect? What do I do? Well, first off, the IRS states that everyone should review the eligibility of their family to make sure that they meet the income, tax, and citizenship criteria needed for the payment. And then finally, in many cases, eligible taxpayers who received a smaller than expected stimulus payment will qualify to receive the difference on their 2020 return. So if you don't receive the right amount or you didn't receive a payment at all, it's not a lost cause. You will be able to get that difference or get the full payment. Economic impact payments are technically an advance payment of a temporary tax credit that taxpayers can claim on your 2020 return. So you're perfectly eligible to do so. But the IRS says to make sure to keep records of the payment you received, or lack of payment if you didn't receive it, and keep the letter you receive in the mail from the IRS. They're going to send out a letter to everyone who received a stimulus payment if there is an issue with your stimulus. That way, once you do your 2020 returns, you'll be able to put that on there, receive the money back that is due to you. It's also important to note that even though this is an advanced tax credit, this is not to be confused with a regular advance on your tax return. This economic impact payment will not affect your 2020 tax return negatively and will not reduce your refund. That's very important. So these were the top 8 reasons, don't know where I got 6 from, why your stimulus payment may have been smaller than what you expected, straight from the IRS guidance. If you have any additional questions, feel free to ask them below, and I'll do my best to address as many as I possibly can. That's really all I have. Please consider subscribing. It helps me feed my cats. And I'd like to thank you for watching, and I hope you have a profitable day.